Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a couple weeks since I've been on. Excited to get Sean Reehoorn on here. He and I have been talking offline quite a bit about some of the ideas that I want to cover with him, but I'm excited to kind of get this going. And he's all dressed up for his annual meeting tonight, and so I figured this is a good day to.
I don't normally wear a button-down shirt to work normally.
Yeah, I don't know why you didn't wear your sport coat too. I mean, this is a big deal. You know, we have tens of followers on this podcast. So
I wore blue pants. I wore blue pants, not superintendent khaki. So we're good.
Well, you know, sometimes you got to go off the reservation a little bit. That's good. That's good. So tell us about who you are, where you are, where you've been. I'll kind of break it down. So tell me about yourself and your family.
So I'm a new dad. June, our daughter will be 11 months old next week. I've been married for 4 years. My wife and I have been together for maybe a decade, I think. It has been a decade now.
Nice.
I'm a golf course superintendent just outside of Seattle, Sammamish, a place called Aldarra Golf Club. It's a Fazio design golf track. It was the former Boeing family farm before it was a golf course. I went to school in the Midwest. I went to school at Michigan State, worked on the East Coast for a while after college. I actually interned at Aldarra the first year it was open in 2001. So I always knew about this place and how great it was and how much, we are being built in the year we were built. The golf course was built in 2001 or opened in 2001. There's no houses on the property, so it's very unique for that generation of golf. Right. So, I'm sitting inside my office right now. It's a old bullpen. I used to store bulls in here. It's very fitting. It's not my office. And so, it's a pretty special place. Really enjoy having the opportunity to take care of it and be here with great people in a great setting.
It's kind of considered a golfer's club too, right? I mean, you get some pretty low handicap folks to play there.
Yeah, that's we're a single membership club only. We're not a men's club only. We're just single membership, women or men, or your wife can be a member, your husband would be a member, but you have a primary, in a family where you have a husband-wife combo, they each have their own membership.
Okay.
So we have a few of those.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of unique things about your golf course, but one of them is grass types. So what's different?
There's two big differences comparative to most people within, say, a 50 to 60 mile radius of us, right? Eastern Washington's a totally different animal. Right. If you've never been to Washington, we have a west side and an east side, a mountain range that runs down the middle, and they're two totally different climates. We try to maintain bent grass greens. We have a variety called Century. I would call it an great uncle to the dominant, extreme, pure distinction categories of bent grasses. If you go back and look at the lineage, that's kind of where the family tree goes. Mm-hmm. So we're about 85 to 90% bent grass, 21 years into the operation. And then our other quest is to have all ryegrass rough. Like we spray ProGrass, we'll spray Roundup to kill big areas that aren't POA. We'll sod out areas that aren't what we want to be ryegrass. It's a continuing, ongoing challenge. We spray ProGrass, and then we spray a lot of Trim-It, and we're on the fence currently, I would say, in the POA cure world and where that's going to go and where we're going to take that.
So no areas of the golf course are off the table is what you're saying.
As far as for POA
fairways. Well, wait a minute. So fairways, back up a little bit. You've got
they're bent POA. They're probably 60-40.
Aren't they colonial though?
Everything, they were planted colonial.
Okay.
Everything we've sanded and seeded since is a mixture of 50% creeping and 50% colonial. Like we still put the colonial in. I add a little bit more creeping bent grass in the last couple of years. Just seems to fill in divots faster and be a little bit better. And, we also use fine fescue as a cover crop in our divots as well,
like a chewings or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Try to get that growing first. Yeah.
So being a private club, obviously it's a little bit easier to control, but do you struggle with the divot mix getting out in the roughs?
we don't have one divot mix bottle on the golf course. We do all of our own sanding and seeding.
Got it.
We don't and that's been a debate since day one why we should do it. It doesn't take that much time for us. We try to do it twice a week in the summertime and once a week in the winter. Usually Tuesdays and Fridays in the summer, and then whatever rainy, not nice day occurs in the wintertime, that's what we'll do.
Right.
And it just eliminates that problem of not getting the bent grass in the rough, or if we put ryegrass out, getting ryegrass in the fairways.
Yeah. That could be a tough dance if you're letting everybody and anybody do the work.
We don't know. So there's no divot parties, no sand and seed bottles, none of that stuff.
Because divot parties always include beer, and that's never a good.
that would be fun. But
yeah. So one of the reasons that I wanted you to kind of define that is, like you said, you're on the west side of the Cascade Range. It's POA country. It's not bent grass country. So what, describe the weather, your annual precip. I think one of the things that people don't realize is how dry it gets in the summertime.
Yeah, we've had 2015, the year that the US Open was at Chambers Bay, was the year that like sticks out the most to me. Last summer will stick out forever for a couple reasons. One, I was at home when it was over 100 degrees with my newborn daughter, June, which was fantastic. But also the very difficult struggle in my professional life, but where I needed to be personally.
Yep.
Like the faucet's on from middle of September, early October till there's always the joke I remember as a kid that summer in Seattle starts on the 5th of July. And that can be a serious thing. It can happen. That's kind of the year we're in right now. It's just, we've had like 3 days above 70 degrees since October. And then all of a sudden somebody turns the faucet off and we'll go 70, 80 days. We've done that a couple times in the last 6 or 7 years since I've been the superintendent, where we go 70, 80 days. We don't have a drop of moisture.
Right.
We don't have nights in the 60s or 70s. So there's a difference there too. We have next to zero humidity. Our biggest struggle humidity wise the last couple of years has been smoke, wildfires in the West. And then that's a totally different animal we're trying to fight with dollar spot and brown patch.
Yep.
And really not overwatering the golf course because there's just no moisture loss.
So and that's a big deal. And it's a really confounding challenge for turf managers. I remember going through it myself, and because you may be, you had 100-degree days last year. You may be close to 100 degrees and the ET is next to nothing.
Yeah, and the more important number there to look at, right, with smoke is solar radiation.
Yep.
You can find that on a weather station, and it's just like putting a plastic bag over in the sunshine. Like all the moisture can't go anywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's just staying inside. The smoke is just holding it in, and you start to kind of explain that to people, and they look at you like you got 3 heads. Like it can't make sense. You need to water more. No, there's no moisture loss. The ET is really low, and the solar radiation number is super low as well.
Yeah, it's really I would say it's the most confusing phenomenon for me as a turf manager to try to figure out, because it's just so counterintuitive. It's hotter than blazes, but the sun just isn't hot, and you should be watering, but it stacks up everywhere. If you even give it a couple of spins, you're kind of done. So
when you can stare at the sun not wearing sunglasses because the smoke is that thick and you're not hurting your eyes, you probably don't need to water.
So how far from the bigger bodies of water are you? I mean, does that play an influence in the weather patterns?
Yeah, it does. We'll get what effects of, so we're 25 miles from Seattle, 28 miles
northeast,
directly directly east, basically. Okay. Like a little to the north, but mostly directly east. Right along I-90. You leave a Mariner game, you're gonna drive right out here, and we're like 3 or 4 miles off I-90.
Yeah.
The Puget Sound plays a huge effect. That's why we don't get a ton of snow. That's a confusion here as well. We don't get a ton of snow because Puget Sound keeps the air temperature relatively above freezing in the wintertime. We do get snow, but we have to get cold air out of Canada for that to really happen. The moisture has to mix together perfectly for it to happen. we get marine layer. It's
Yeah.
not as bad as San Francisco, but we will get marine layer where it'll be cloudy and foggy, more cloudy than foggy, but there will be some moisture and mist in the air until 11 o'clock. And all of a sudden it's just like somebody just rolls it away and, it's 85 degrees 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later.
Yeah. So you did have a lot of snow, or more snow than normal this winter?
We've had a couple
spring
of
almost.
storms the last couple of years. Yeah, we had a white Christmas
Yeah.
for the white Christmas, which was crazy. And my in-laws were here and it kept snowing and snowing. And my father-in-law was like, I don't know how we're getting home. So
yeah, because you're really not equipped to deal with that.
Yeah, we're just not, they're not, and it's usually a wet, heavy snow,
Right.
a lot of hills. It's not like getting snow in, Michigan or even New Jersey and New York and those areas where it's much flatter and it's easier to plow the roads, and they have all that stuff equipped. They've become more equipped in years past because the city's been criticized by its constituents a lot for their lack of snow. But I mean, on slopes of hills that are, 15, 20%, like, what are you going to do? You're not going up them anyway, whether it's plowed or not, you're not going up it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, and you've got a little bit of elevation, right? Compared to Seattle proper.
Actually, we sit in the bottom. We're the golf course.
Okay.
My office is like 150 feet above sea level.
Okay.
And so there's elevation all around us.
Right.
We just kind of sit down in the Snoqualmie River Valley.
So what, as far as disease pressure, I mean, I know the answer to this, but what's your number one disease, and for how many months?
Any month of the year, it's an option to have Fusarium, Microdochium, pink snowball, whatever the hot name to call it is for this month. They're all the same disease. Microdochium is probably the biggest thing we call it here, Fusarium, and it's every month. Like, you can have it, like we're having it right now a little bit just because we haven't dried out at all and haven't had a ton of sunny days.
Yeah.
Our biggest challenge is that, and then our second biggest challenge is because of all the bent grass, the colonial, September, October, when we get a lot of foggy mornings, is dollar spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had to adjust some fertility for some fertility levels there, and also added a few different sprays as some DMIs and SDHIs, things like that, to combat what we need on the dollar spot side.
It's funny how you talk to, some of the more traditional East Coast pathologists, and they'll say, you don't have dollar spot out there. That's not really a thing. But I could tell you, and you're confirming it. That same time frame, that's when we saw it pop up, and it's always kind of it's an easy fix, but at the same time, you just don't think about it because you were told it doesn't happen out this way.
And then the real challenge becomes in that September, early October timeframe. If winter or moisture comes early, like, it hangs, it's not active, but it hangs around forever because the bent grass is like not growing, not happening,
right?
Like, not filling in, and you can kind of stare at a couple fairways all for a couple months in the wintertime, like, okay, it's time, go away, like, I'm done with you, but it doesn't want to.
Yeah, and it's like the Microdochium. If you let it get a foothold, it's 10 times harder to control than if you just you do your curative and get done with it. I took a call a couple days ago, I guess it was last Friday, from a new superintendent in the area, and he moved up from Park City, and he kind of sheepishly asked me, he said, so is the weather always like this in the springtime? Is it always just kind of cold and wet? And yeah, unfortunately, he's just used to a lot drier climate, and it's just frustrating because, like you said, so what'd you say? Summer starts July 4th.
July 5th, they say that. Our biggest thing with Fusarium or Microdochium, sure, I'm gonna have a few pathologists will tell me I didn't say that right or something, but is, like, we have hot spots on the golf identification tees and fairways, and we're spraying those on a much more preventative program, where we might get away on other areas of the golf course with more curative solutions.
Sure.
Just because if you're going full preventative, it can be extremely spendy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and like you said, when you get into those dry months, hopefully you kind of see a little bit less activity, and you can kind of take a breather and give your chemistries a break too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope this doesn't dive too far in, but I had a chance to meet your mentor, the guy that built the golf course, Paul Colleran. And I wanted to get it because I think what you and I talk about a lot is kind of the whole work-life balance and mentorships and things like that. And I know you hold him in high regard for what you learned under him. So how did he shape not only how you do your job now, but and we probably should back up and talk a little bit about Paul and his legacy, but and how you live your life, more importantly.
Oh man, that's a tough one, right? Like
you said you didn't want any of these questions beforehand, so this
no,
is
I'm
your
good.
zinger.
I think it's better. But I did know I was coming on, right? Like, and we were going to talk about some stuff, and this question was going to come up, and it's how I think about that now is totally different when I thought about 5 years ago,
Sure.
7 years ago when I first became superintendent. And about 6 months into me being superintendent, somebody said to me, "We didn't hire you to fill Paul's shoes. We hired you to find your own." And so I tried to find my own shoes, right? Like fit and be my own person. And that's who Paul was, right? Paul was his own person.
Right.
I remember I was dating a girl at a time and we had broken up, and you're in one of those funks at work and you're like, whatever. And he knew something was going on. He kind of pulled me aside one day and he's like, I don't know. He's like, "I don't really care what's going on in your personal life, because that's your stuff. And if you want to talk about it, we can, but I'm not going to ask." Right. And he said, like, what did he say to me? He goes, "When you come to work, just leave all that stuff outside, because, this is where you can get focused back on what you need to be focused on."
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really understand at the time. I think I understand it now. Like, work, and my wife will attest to this, work bleeds over into my personal life a lot. I think it's very common as golf course superintendents, but we're not the only profession that happens to.
Right.
Right. We want to think that sometimes, I think, as ourselves, that we're like this, we're the only people that deal with certain things, but everybody deals with stuff. And Paul was right. Like, I just needed to come to focus on work, and then maybe that would help me find some clarity in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
So when I come to work, I just want to be at work. I want to be here for the time I'm going to be here, give 100%, do my day, and then go home. And what I've learned, and through a bunch of stuff and talking with a bunch of people, and advice professionals and friends and colleagues, is like, it's presence, right? Like, I'm at work. I want to be at home. I want to be at home. Like, my life is so much different now than it was 48 weeks ago. When June was born, it'll be like so much more presence, and like being where I am is so much more important to me now. It's really hard with all of these distractions and the internet and social media, and all this stuff makes presence really hard. But presence is the only way you get through life. Like, balance is work-life balance to me is the wrong approach. Like, it's just not doable. Right. But Paul was somebody who just loved to be at work, but he also, as things progressed in his illness, and I got to know some people around him a little closer, like, they just loved him being a family guy too. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he showed that very much at work. And so I'm kind of the same way. I don't show it a ton. That's who I am. That's like, and so he shaped me that way. Like I said, I knew I was coming on the podcast, so I thought about this, and who I am, I think, really is ultimately that, like, every step in my career, every step in high school, every step growing up, like, I've always been fortunate to be surrounded by really good people. Mm-hmm. I can think of like friends, parents, one in particular who passed away a few years ago. He was a Michigan State guy too. I mean, I've known him since I was like 5 years old, 6 years old, like, took me under his wing. Like, I was raised in a single parent home, always looked out for me, always had great advice, always had good laughter. My professional career, starting, I didn't know that's what I was going to do. I was caddying at a golf course surrounded by great golf pros, a great superintendent, and a different guy, a gentleman named Rick. Just always around good people, playing golf. And golf has been so good to me that, like, that's a part of the reason that, like, I give what I give at work. It's like, to me, it's giving back to golf. Like, it's not really a career. Sometimes it is. Like, it pays the bills and more, but it's like golf has given me so much. All I can do is get back to golf. Like that's all I care about.
Yeah. So you started as a caddy. So when did you know you wanted to pursue this route instead of being in the pro shop or giving lessons or that kind of thing? Or was that never even a consideration?
It really started because that job, so I worked at this golf course called Avalon Golf Links, and there's about 10 of us, I would say, that grew up together that are in the golf business in different ways, that all grew up this one golf course.
Mm-hmm.
It would actually be a really cool thing to get us. One of the guys is a superintendent in the area at Overlake, Corey Brown, friend of mine, great guy. He's a few years older than I'm in high school, but my brother's in golf, couple other kids I play golf with are on the golf on the pro side. But for me, work on the mains crew was 40 hours a week. It was the most way to make the most money. It works the best hours to work because I could still play golf in the afternoon.
Right.
It was the same schedule. I worked in the cart barn one summer, washing carts. I hated getting out of work at 9:30 at night. And then your day's ruined. Yeah. Or you go to work at 2, you're done at 9, and you only got 16 hours a week or 20 hours. This was 40 hours a week and overtime, same schedule every day. You just did the same thing. And that it was never intended to be a profession, a career. That was just because I was lucky to meet great people along the way. And this is where I ended up.
Sure.
$5.15 an hour was my first paying job. How about you?
I started caddying in 1980, and I think you could make $2 a bag. And when I was 13, I was big enough to carry 2 bags. And I think that summer, I was kind of a hustler, and I think I made about $7,000 that summer as a 13-year-old. That was a hell of a lot of money.
That's a boatload of money. Sure.
Yeah. I don't know where it is besides the Gallagher machine at the Ben Franklin down the street from me, but
yeah,
from where I grew up. But, and I tell this story a lot, and I'm not, I'm sad that this isn't an avenue for people to get into the game. The whole, there's professional caddies. I think you've got some at your place, don't you?
We don't have any, but no, we don't.
The resort I was at had them, and certainly, a lot of places in the South have professional caddies, but that route for young kids to get in and mix it up with the business leaders of the community, learn how to speak in front of people, learn how to be comfortable with, people that I really, it saddens me that isn't an option for kids anymore.
I would say that the one thing the first thing golf probably taught me being a caddy, that had nothing to, other than keeping up and paying attention, golf taught me how to introduce myself to adults and shake somebody's hand.
Right. Look them in the
that
eyes,
was we went over that as caddy training. That's what you learn, right? You learn how to shake somebody's hand and introduce yourself.
Yep.
And I think at the time you're 12 or 13 years old, this is the dumbest thing I'm ever going to learn. And then you go for a real job interview and you're oh, I know how to do that. And you watch other people not be able to do it.
Right.
And you're I just separated myself. That's the Stephen Covey's book, right? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Mm-hmm.
That's in there somewhere. And it's in the time you don't think it's a thing, but you learn it, and it never goes away. How you introduce yourself and how you shake somebody's hand.
It's covert etiquette. It's just the guys that are walk mowing your greens. That's covert exercise. They don't know it, but they're going to get 7 or 8 miles in today. Right.
Yeah. I remember, that's funny, because I remember in high school, there was a kid that worked on the crew with us. And he was a bigger kid, and he walked mowed greens every day. And a month in, he had to throw his belt out and get a piece of rope to make a belt, because he didn't really want to afford a new belt. And he just kept tightening the belt all summer long.
Yep.
And he's just you're right now, I can think back to high school. If they would have had Fitbits when we were in high school.
Right.
How many
Exactly.
steps we would have crushed, walk mowing greens on a Saturday.
30,000 a day.
Yeah. And we walk mowed 27 greens with 4 guys.
Did you have trailers?
Only on Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay. So you walked them, because when I got to the desert, we were still walking bunting greens mowers around the golf course without trailers. I mean, that was brutal in the summertime. But
we had 2, and I might get the number wrong on this. The John Deere triplex, that was the rough, we called it trim at the time, 2653A. Is that? Yep. I think that's right.
Yep.
We had the golf course. There was 4 guys that mowed greens. and you usually got the trim mower in the afternoon or mow rough in the afternoon. That was usually your second job. There was 2 653As and 1 national. And you did not want to be the third person done because you got the national. It's always wanted to be first or second. Always.
Yeah, but if you've never been on a national, you just haven't lived. It's a whole different level of risk, and the belts whirring between your legs and all that stuff.
I also feel like if you've been on a national and still have all 10 fingers and toes, you're probably ahead of the game.
Yeah, for sure. Talk about because we've talked about this quite a bit. Talk about labor where you are. Is it hard? Are you struggling more than you thought you would, or do you have some secrets you can share?
We're doing okay on labor side. We've done pretty good. I've had 2 assistants actually that are as green as grass, but they made career changes because of COVID, and they've been great. It's been good to see, refreshing, right? Like they're both grew up playing golf, around golf, never chose golf as a career, and then the COVID spin found them into golf, and they've been great. They're local. I have guys that have been here 20 years, guy all the way down to guys who've been here 5. Most of my crew is between 5 and 20 years. But keeping up with pay has been hard. Like,
right,
the cost of things. I mean, we can, podcasts are like the dinner table. Don't talk about politics and religion, so we'll stay away from those. But it's been hard, like keeping up with that and what it is. And like I said, my first job, 1996. You make $5.15 an hour. What you're paying guys now, like it seems like so much, but it's not, right? But it is.
Right. It is
so much. It's just hard to us understand because the glory days were always better. That's just
right.
what happens when you get to be a 40-year-old man like myself, and the glory days were always better. I think a part of finding good labor is you got to build a relationship with that person. You can talk about culture. It has nothing to do with culture. It just talks about like that person needs to feel cared for and that you care about them, right? That's it. I think COVID, if anything, as a manager, I always cared about my workers. I don't even I should say that. I always cared about the guys that I worked with.
Sure.
Not my workers. That's a terrible thing to say. I always cared about the people I worked with. But now I had to start caring about them on a 24-hour a day schedule, right? Like what they're doing at home. Are they, how's their family doing? Are they finding the things they need? Like all that stuff started to come into play. Where before it was like, hey, as long as you're on time and you put in your time, like what you do outside of work is your business,
Yeah.
And now that becomes a little bit different. I also think that being optimistic about it is better than being pessimistic.
Sure.
I think that matters, right? Like going on Twitter and whining and complaining that you can't find people to work is solving what problem?
Yeah, but how is what you just identified? How is that not culture? I mean, that you're building a culture in that regard.
Yeah, I'm just like work-life balance. I'm not a big, let's have a great culture person, because to me, culture is defined as your relationships with people. And so I try to focus on my relationships instead of what our culture is as a staff.
Yeah. Yeah. So these assistants that you brought on, you got so much tech around there. Can I probably assume that that's how they came to you, or something different?
One was in the financial world, and one was partway to full-time electrician.
Okay.
And just kind of both of them, I think, like, wow, like, what am I doing with my life? Like if I'm going to make it, and more probably, hey, if I'm going to make a change, I'm going to do it now.
Sure.
And it was a good time to make a change for them, and trying to teach them as much as I can, and also let them, as I said earlier, like find their own shoes, like who they are.
Right. Right.
They don't need to be like me. They need to be like themselves, and we'll find a way to fit all that stuff together.
So that's the assistant topic's a hot one right now too, and obviously you've tapped into alternative markets, which I think a lot of guys are realizing is really the best way to go. Either that, or finding somebody with a good good attitude and a good work ethic on the crew already, and say, hey, you interested? So what do you look for? And probably as importantly, what do you promise isn't the right word, but I'm just going to use it. What do you promise your assistants that they'll get out of the experience at Aldarra? Because I think a lot of times it comes down to, right or wrong, it comes down to what they're going to get out of it, because obviously this is a stepping stone. It may be a 2-year, it may be a 5-year stepping stone, but your goal, I know, is to see them succeed and move on. So what, how do you map out a plan for a new assistant? I think that's a hard.
I don't even know. I don't even know if there is a plan, right? I don't even know if you can map out a plan. Like I said, I think you can build a relationship. I tell them
the reason I ask it is because it's such a tight market. That position is such a tight market. And we were taught in school that you build a resume. At the time when I was leaving school, I mean, you knew you were going to be one of 200 on a stack. So there dang well better be something on that resume that separates you. Well, the tables are kind of turned. If there's
3 people, yeah, in the staff.
If there's a potential candidate for an assistant position at Aldarra, he's probably looking at 3 or 4 other golf clubs in the area. So how do you tailor that? Because I think that's a conversation I've had with a lot of superintendents, is their recruiting plan. And it's really an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if there's a plan, right? I think there's definitely no formula to success either.
Sure, because everybody's different.
I think a part of it is I want to find somebody who's local and understands the area, because I've known people who have moved here from out of state and they're like, this weather doesn't work for me, and 2 years later they're gone. Right.
Good point.
You gotta understand that.
Yep.
They probably have to be in a good place that they're like just doing it because they love golf.
Sure.
That's really what you want. Whether it's important to play golf as a superintendent, I don't know if it's important, but I don't understand how you enjoy what we do if you don't play golf.
See, that was going to be one of my questions.
Right.
And I think that's the right answer.
And to each their own. And there's people who are good at this profession, and there's good that didn't play. There's good coaches in the NFL. There's good coaches in the NBA who didn't play at a high level, but played somewhere, right? Their love of the game overseas. And to me, the money is they make a ton of money. Yeah, they work a ton of hours too.
Right.
And so do we, but they work a lot. They're gone, they travel, they do all those things. I think I just want to give them an opportunity to hey, I just want you to be you, and then we'll figure out all the things you need to learn. I have a hard time training and teaching people sometimes because I never felt like I needed somebody to find stuff for me to do. I was always finding ways to stay busy on the golf course and do my own stuff and meet people and do all these things. And so it's hard for me sometimes to be like, hey, this is how you do this.
Sure.
It's rather here's the Lego set, go put it together and figure it out. Right. And then that's going to be better, and I can help correct along the way. I think that person whoever that person is also needs to be open to, they just got to be open to listening to things and talking through things and hearing, instead of, hey, I know I don't need your help. Because that's not, I think there's probably a time in my career that I was that person as a superintendent, and I'm not that way as much anymore. I can't be on certain topics and be hard-headed, but you're only as good as the people around you. As I say, and making relationships with those people and making sure that they feel supported, and they get even the simple things like getting your staff new gloves. It's not hard, right? People don't need a lot. They just need to know it means something, I think.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so you answered my question. Do you think a superintendent should be a good golfer? Do you do your employees have an outlet to play?
Yeah, so the golf course is closed on Mondays and they can play on Mondays.
Okay.
And then some employees, managers, and other things can play on other days of the week.
Do they?
And some do. hasn't been a great golfing season. I got a couple guys on the staff that have been here a while, that have taken up golf in the last couple of years, and I encourage them. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you need a golf clubs, you need a golf bag, you need, shoes. Like, I'm gonna help you. Finding golf balls they always have plenty of those.
Yeah.
But making sure they got a towel, and hey, your shirt's tucked in, and helping them. Hey, here's an old putter I had here. You need a new putter here. Take this one. Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's showing them that you're vested in them, just like you hope they are in you and the operation. And there was nothing better than if I could get somebody snuck out on the golf course, just an hourly employee, and they would almost invariably come back with a list of things. And that's value to the operation, right?
It's ownership, right? It's
totally love that.
You see, I have not been very good this winter, but I'll get better as the summer goes on. Like, there's 3 ways you can see the golf course. You can ride around on a golf cart, you can walk with no clubs,
mm-hmm.
or you can walk with your clubs.
Right.
And the first one has its purpose because there's plenty to see in very little time. The second one is sometimes you just need to see things a little bit slower. And the third one is enjoying the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You say you'd have employees go out and play and bring back a list. I worked at this place right here for my first job out of college, Canoe Country Club in New Jersey. And we lived on property. We had a house on the property between the 8th hole and I can't even remember now. Between the 11th hole and the 14th hole.
Okay.
And we lived on the property. Like, you were there every day. I was around, I had awesome people, awesome guys. Like, we had a ton of fun. I found ways to go out, like, swipe my card, I'm done with work, and just go play golf at night, because we could any night we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And I can still do that now. Like, if I get a game at work with some guys, members, whatever, like, I know I can't be out of like work. Like, there's a part of me that they ask questions. I gotta answer it. I gotta be honest and all those things. But I can just enjoy golf and leave work out of it.
How?
And I think it's all because of that time, like living on property. Like, you could get if all you did was live on property and go to work, like, what else do you do?
Right.
We had a rule between, I was an assistant, I had some other assistants I lived with. We were all single at the time, and we had this farmhouse on the golf course. And we would go out, drinking in town or go out for dinner or whatever. First person talking about work, and I'd buy a round of beers. So you got pretty good about not talking about work. Like, you just got good at it. Like,
That'll teach you.
But you would also try to like bait people into it because you wanted to get the round out of the way because you knew it was going to happen. But
somebody's going to fall for it, right?
Right, totally.
Yeah, my oldest son had after his baseball career ended, he picked up company softball, and they've got a rule that if you hit a home run with less than 3 people on base, you throw $10 in the hat. So similar deal. It just teaches them to look at the game differently. Right. I struggled for a long time separating job from golf, because almost all the time I would play. I mean, I had 3 kids at the time, and it was almost always with ownership, and those were not exactly enjoyable rounds to begin with. But it wasn't until I realized I had to carry another scorecard, because my memory's nice and short. So if I write it down, it's gone. And so I could just keep on playing. But I think everybody kind of has to develop that kind of that way to separate what you're seeing from what you're trying to do. I've enjoyed golf. I've never sucked this badly at golf, and I've never enjoyed it more because it's not my place, right? And I can just enjoy it for the game and not have to get all bent out of shape about stuff.
I go on vacation, don't bring my golf clubs. People are like, well, you didn't bring your golf clubs. I'm like, I'm around that stuff all the time.
Right.
Like, I don't need to. Like, we went to Hawaii, we took June to Hawaii, finally got to go to Hawaii. We scheduled a trip at the start of COVID. That got canceled again. Finally, she was born, so we had to change they had to add some stuff to our luggage, and we went to Hawaii. Didn't bring my golf clubs. And people are like, oh, you're going to Hawaii? I'm like, nope, not. Like, I just want to sit on the beach. I want to sit by the pool. Like golf is not in my mind.
Yeah.
But then this weekend, I'm going with a couple guys. We're going over to Gamble Sands, Brewster. it's all golf. Like, yeah, great. But it's different, right? It's like, this is a golf trip and we're going to talk about grass, going to a couple other superintendents, and we're going to talk about grass. We're going to talk about big philosophy stuff. And then we're going to talk about other things too.
Sure.
But there are times that going on vacation, sorry, golf clubs aren't going because it's just not where I want to be. I don't want to do it. Like,
especially with family around. I think that's something you're getting pretty quickly, is it that time is
for
pretty
sure.
precious.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's shift gears a little bit. Golf's always had its challenges. What do you think the biggest challenges are going to be in the next 5 years?
Well, right now it's what things cost.
Yeah.
I just said
everything.
Talk about politics and religion, but what things cost, right? So that's the biggest challenge. The popularity is at an all-time high.
Oh, you're
golf
feeding
is
right
like
into my next question.
Golf is like think about golf like a stock at an all-time high right now. Are you buying? Or are you looking like, that PE is not going to work, let's stay away from that? Like, wow, it's way too high. Where's it going? It has to go down, right? It can stay level. It can stay at that number for a long time. But I think golf there has to be some buyback in golf. And we've seen a little bit, I think, already in 2022 compared to 2020. There's been some buyback in rounds. If you think about it like a stock, like I said.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge is, labor is always going to be a challenge, but if the economy goes there, like, the labor might get easier. Who knows, right? Because I was just on a call last week, National Golf Day, talking about the FIT Act, which is making sure that people can use their HSAs to buy golf equipment and do stuff and helping out. And, because golf was such a good mental release for people, being outside, fresh air, things they weren't getting by being stuck at home from COVID. So golf has a chance to grow. We just got to find a way to make golf more accessible to people who don't have that opportunity to find it, right? Like,
so that's my follow-up question is the industry smart enough to capitalize on the windfall over the last couple of years? You kind of answered it already.
There's smart enough people, but are they going to put the money you look at some of the things that the city of San Francisco has done, the place that they built in Houston to host the PGA Tour event, investing in communities. Golf donates more money than every other sport combined when it comes to charity.
Right.
And so, even, they're talking about converting golf courses in Seattle to affordable housing. Been going on for a couple of years, and it just blows my mind. So you're going to take these areas that bring people together, that speak, on the call last week at National Golf Day, I told the lady from our senator's office, you go to the first tee at Jackson, there's probably people speaking 5 or 6 different languages. They don't know each other. They're getting paired together. They're having fun. Like, what else do you want to build diversity and inclusion? It's public golf. It's municipal golf.
Right.
We just need to, you go to these high-end resorts and they're great places, but shouldn't we be building par 3 courses in inner city locations where kids who don't have access to green space can play golf for $10 a year or whatever it may be? There's plenty of money. We can find a way to make this work. We just need to get the right people.
Yeah.
And it's big for me to talk because it's not my money, right? But that's my vision, is I think golf needs to capitalize and move into some places where you can pop out on your lunch break and go play 9 holes of golf on a short course downtown.
Yep. Well, and you use the term green space. That's one of the things that I know California is pushing the same thing, trying to convert to more affordable housing from some of the public golf venues. You lose that in a lot of areas, and be the only place or one of the few places that kind of green space exists. And I just think it's so short-sighted to think about that. But
I think that one other thing I would add to that is, how does golf shed the label that it's elitist?
Right.
That's it, right? Because they're not really talking about shutting down softball parks and soccer pitches in downtown Seattle.
Right.
But it costs money to play those sports too. It's probably just as expensive
Yeah.
right, in a way to join a league and do all this stuff and play on Tuesday nights. Like, it's really no different. But we're not talking about shutting down the sports complex. It's the golf course fault because it's elitist.
Yeah.
Like I said, you go to the first tee at Jefferson or Jackson, downtown Seattle, there's people all speaking all sorts of different languages that don't know each other. And they go play golf and they have a great time and they shake hands and they see him the next Tuesday. Hey, good to see you again. How you doing? Right? Like, what else could you want?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the development of the 90s, I think, was a real, it wasn't a benefit in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Right.
You know, because it kind of funneled things down a little bit too much. And if it doesn't make them money, there's no sense in developing it, but there's so many more facets to that and so many more benefits. Yeah, you're exactly right. But it takes
golf courses were only built around nice housing developments,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
just further increase the elitist situation. You know, you look at and I don't know the full details of it, and there's a lot of information out there on it. Like what they're doing at Eastlake, right? To renovate in the city around. Like, it's fantastic. There's this golf course in the middle of the city that's finding ways to provide opportunities for people who don't have access to golf or wouldn't have access to golf.
Yep.
Because it's the
great.
right thing to do.
Exactly. You recently hosted the Pac-12 tourney. What did you learn about? I mean, obviously those kids are at the top of their game, but what's changed in the game from their perspective? I mean, they hit it a country mile, but what else did you notice that's different or changed?
It's just no fear.
Yeah.
Like they don't stand up. You know, when I was a kid playing golf in high school, I was like, oh, can't hit driver there, got to hit 3-wood, got to lay back. And now there's like, why would you ever do that? Like, why would you ever lay back? Like, why would you ever? I hit it high enough, I hit it far enough, I hit it straight enough. Like, you know, they just pound it down there and they, you know, hit it and go find it, and then hit it again and find it again. And, you know, the least amount of time it takes me to do that, the better. And the further I hit it, the easier it is to take the less amount of strokes.
Yeah.
So that's the way they play golf.
Do they play quickly?
Some do, most don't.
I remember my college coach told me to miss it fast. That was his mantra. And he said, you got to miss it fast. Just, you know, if you're not playing well, at least don't hold everybody else up. And I love that.
What's the sign? Play well, play fast, play poorly, play faster.
Yep.
You know, they don't play. Most of them don't play very poorly.
I've got that t-shirt.
It's just TV, right? They see it on TV, and
yep.
You got to read it from 3 angles, and you got to take this, and it's just, you know, it's TV. And they never talk about how slow they play on TV, but we all watch it. It's like, and I am adamantly 100% for a shot clock. Like, you're on the clock. Here you go. We're starting the number.
Even more than it is right now, officially, right?
Right. Totally. You're on the shot clock. Like, it's visual with every group. Like, it would be fantastic if it said, here's a shot clock. Like, you got 35 seconds, and there's just walking around and the horns going off everywhere. It was, you know, if you don't make it, it's a 1-stroke penalty. Like, great. You just go on the next one.
I posted a YouTube video of a team, baseball team called the Savannah Bananas. And it's really an interesting idea. I think it's a little bit of Harlem Globetrotters, a little bit of baseball, certainly a lot of entertainment. But, you know, there was a thread, I think, on Twitter a couple of weeks ago about speakers on the golf course. And I am 100% for it, because that just brings a different facet of people into the game that maybe thought it was the stodgy, stuffy game, you know, that just elitists played. It takes, you know, this is from a guy who never walks around with a shirt untucked, but at the same time.
So are you for speakers while hiking?
Not personally, no, but it doesn't bother me if somebody else has to have it.
I'm kind of curmudgeon-y. I'm not.
Yeah, I know.
In my own personal space, I'm against the speaker simply because, like, it's not what I'm there for.
Right.
But then there are times where I'm like, yeah, I can see that's great. I also don't want it to be bothered by somebody. It's your choice, and I don't care. That's your thing. I just don't want to infringe on. I don't want to be Rodney Dangerfield and like infringing on what I'm doing. Right. That's
right. But I think for me, it's a wider view of, you know, meeting people where they are that may or may not have been in the game otherwise. If that's what they have to do to make themselves feel comfortable on the golf course, great.
Sure. And I can see that.
Yeah. How did COVID we talked about this a lot. You kind of mentioned some of it with your staff, and how did the COVID years, because we're separated by a mountain range, but there's also a lot of differences between where you are and where I am over the last couple of years. But how did it change your approach to the job? What's in other words, not so much how you treat your staff or how you interact with staff, but kind of, did it change your priorities at all?
Professionally or personally?
Yes.
So 2 questions.
Sure.
Professionally, everything's different.
And agronomically, for that matter.
Agronomically, it's just everything's different, right? Like, never seen that much traffic, never seen that many golfers. We work 8.5 hours Monday through Thursday, and we work a short Friday because Friday afternoons were just stupid busy. Didn't matter.
Sure.
That was one change, and we've stuck with it now because guys like the short Friday. We're done at noon. Like, we got to stick around and water in the afternoon. A couple of us do, and that's fine. Giving up some things like myself, hey, like, I can't be at work. We were kind of working a split shift, half the crews one day, half the crew the other day, just to give people as much space. Like, we're meeting outside, doing all these things. Right. So trying to give people some more, like, some freedom, like trust, like communication, building all those things together. Personally, like, 10 years from now, my wife works at Microsoft. She works from home, and she has worked from home. Mm-hmm. 10 years ago from now, if you interviewed both of us, our understanding and memory of COVID will be 2 totally different things.
Right. Hers
was stuck in the house, couldn't leave, really hard. Mine was, I got to go to work every day and be outside and enjoy the sunshine. And like, so my mental presence, my mental health was totally different, Yep. Much easier, right? Like, golf became this great place to be. Golf also became this challenging place to be, because inside the 4 walls of the golf course, a lot of people treat it like the world, like what was going on outside the world never happened. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to operate in this super busy place in a totally foreign land. Yeah. Right? We don't know what's happening. We don't know what today brings. I told our staff numerous times, what I'm telling you today is the truth. This could all change tomorrow.
Right. And it did.
This is what I know today. Right? I don't know what tomorrow brings.
Right.
So like, if I tell you something tomorrow that contradicts what I say right now, I didn't lie to you. I just told you what I knew today.
Right. Just go with it.
COVID had to teach you something. Mm-hmm. If you didn't learn something from COVID, you kind of missed the experiment. You had to change something about your life. You changed something about who you are to survive.
Yeah.
I remember I was taking an anthropology class in college, and I have thought about this a few times. And then as COVID was going on, I thought about this all the time. We were talking about evolution in this class, and the professor was talking, and somebody raises their hand and says, well, if evolution is a thing, how come there's not a person with like a quarter tail, a half tail, 3/4 tail? And he just goes, well, that's not really how evolution works. And they're like, everyone's kind of like, well, what do you mean? He goes, because they might take thousands of years, but things change really quickly. Like, all of a sudden if we went from apes to this, like the tail on the tailbone, that just went away like that. It was just gone. And that's kind of what COVID was, right? Like, all of a sudden, like, the world's just trucking down this one thing. And all of a sudden, like 3 weeks later, we're like, it's totally different.
Yep.
And you had to find ways to scratch and catch up. And if you didn't, you might have gone in a deep, dark hole mentally. And if you did, you probably, even if you went to a deep, dark hole, you could still come out, I think, as learning things and being a different person and being a better understanding person.
You know, your example of the experience of your wife's versus yours. And, I think about, I see this in a lot of kids now. It's really profoundly affected them in not a good way, because it's such a social experience in school. And,
right.
I think that's been terribly damaging. And, superintendents, I think, are not uniquely, but they're very adept at adaptation and change. And so that it was cool to watch all you guys adapt on a daily basis to the changes and really take it in stride. But it also kind of baffles me how quickly a lot of us moved back to, we got to get the bunker rakes back in the bunkers. We got to put the ball washers back out. It's like, man, 2 years without it and not a complaint. You know, did we need to plug all that stuff back in right away? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, the bunker rake is an interesting one. I kind of like the rule, and I think they should keep the rule. Like, if you're in somebody else's bad rake job, like, you just get to move it. It's okay. That was a rule, and they kind of accept it, and that's fine. The bunker rake, though, became a direction. It became a rope stake. Like, without bunker rakes, people just jumping in the steep side of the bunker and just trash in the face. And you're like, oh, what? Yeah. But if the bunker rake's on the low side, they would walk around. They walk in by the bunker rake. Whether they do a good job or not, that's not, I had never thought about that angle. But so, like, I was kind of excited for the bunker rake to go out, so we would stop having to fix people jumping off the green,
the cliff divers,
doing cliff jumping into the bunker, right? Like, that stopped. All this, it was just like one day it was just gone. But I'm like, oh yeah, the bunker rakes are back out. That's the difference.
It's good perspective. Didn't think about that way. Okay, so I've got another guy I'm trying to get on who lost his golf course to one of the fires in California, and he said, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to have enough to talk about." I'm like, "Dude, trust me, an hour will go like that."
You got plenty. You lost everything in a fire. Now you got to figure it out. You got plenty to talk about.
And he's rebuilding it right now, and I want to get him on just to talk about, walk us through how you come into work one day and your shop, your house, your golf course are gone, your pump station, everything's gone. Now, where do you start?
Talk about perspective.
Yeah.
And what balance is about that, right? There's no balance in any of that, but there can be presence in what you have and what you don't have, and what you're fortunate, what you're lucky to have, what you're not, right? There's no balance in, hey, I don't have a house anymore, and I lost. How am I going to keep? Are they going to keep paying me? Like, what like, am I out of a job too? Like, how does that work, right?
Well, I think there were a lot of industries where all of those considerations were on the table, over the last couple of years, and that's tough. So, okay, so what I want to do with the last couple minutes is I like to call it my lightning round, and we added one before we got on live, but so we'll start with this, and you can't think about it, but favorite cup cutter and why? Because this has been kind of a hot topic on social media the last couple of days.
It's the Parade lever. It's the one I learned how to cut cups on. It's the one I've always used. I'm a single cup guy. Like, I don't do the 2-stage thing. It's how I learned. It's what I was taught. That's just the way I do it.
Okay. All right. I'd like to think I know the answer to this, but I don't think I do. Beer or bourbon?
Oh man.
Depends on the time of the day, right?
What's for dinner?
Okay.
And it's probably, at this point, it's probably bourbon.
Because it's mac and cheese. So you're going to have a nice bourbon with your mac and cheese.
It's just less filling and it tastes better.
So a longtime Idaho superintendent, we were at an education committee meeting, and we were talking about, all of us were 50 or better, and we were talking about, the invariable trips to the bathroom in the middle of the night, waking up and your brain turning on, and got to stop drinking beer. And he said, well, that's why I switched to whiskey years ago, so I don't have to get up in the middle of the night. All right, so what's for dinner is the answer to that. I like that.
And your hair doesn't hurt the next morning.
That's right. College or pro sports?
College. Michigan State basketball, Michigan State football.
Okay. Your course or somebody else's to play?
Oh, I'll play here.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, yeah. I think you might be in the minority on that answer.
I'll play here.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Most important turf tool in your arsenal?
GPS sprayer.
Okay. I thought you were going to say staff. I thought you were going to say your team.
I see. I cannot consider my staff to be a tool.
Okay.
That's the word I can't.
Good. Good.
Most important piece of the operation, staff.
Yeah.
My staff are not a tool. They're better people than just being a tool. That's how I think of it.
Most important innovation in the industry in the last 20 years?
Oh, the 648. Torah air fire.
100%.
Going from the smashing down plugs
to
the 648.
or maybe GPS, right? I mean, that
Yeah, but
innovation
GPS is 30 years old in other
Right.
industries. So
yeah, but they finally figured out how to scale up our industry. What's something people don't know about Seattle outside of golf? You can't answer the gum wall. That doesn't count.
It gets less rain than New York City
Interesting.
yearly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. What parting shot? What advice for young? I took a call from a young assistant the other day, and he said, "Man, I love the podcast. I love all the questions and people you have on." And so, yeah, to wrap up, a young guy in the industry that's listening to this, what advice do you have for him, no matter what level he's at?
I think you always have to remember what got you into golf. I think your passion or love for the game has to be first.
Mm-hmm.
You ended up here for a reason, right? Like like even somebody who plays in the NFL, their like love for sports, once they stop loving the sport, they probably can't play at a high level anymore.
Right. Because it's too much work.
Yeah, because it's just because you can't get out of bed. You can't go work out. You can't put in the extra time that you can't go to education seminars. Like if you could bottle up the feeling that you have when you leave the GIS and put it in a 1 liter or 2 liter bottle on your office shelf, and you could drink the Kool-Aid every once in a while, or you go to GCSAA headquarters, which I've had the opportunity to do a few times, and it's fantastic. And I think you were there the first time I ever went. You've been there before, and you're like, it's like drinking from a fire hose, but it's like drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yep.
If you could like put that Kool-Aid that you feel after you leave GIS, or your passion and love for the game, in a giant Yeti on your shelf, and then when you're having one of those days where work sucks, because that happens, and you could just have a little couple shots of that and realize and remember why you're here and why you do it, life would be easier. Yeah. I think that's it. I think it's just the passion and the love you have for the game, and
remember what brought you here. Yeah. Right. I love it. Sean Reehoorn, finally got you on. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Have a great day. Good to see you.
Good luck with your annual meeting tonight.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch.
Okay. Sounds great. Have a good night. Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
Bye.